As God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another. And if anyone has a complaint against one another, forgive each other, just as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in the one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly. Teach and admonish one another in all wisdom, and with gratitude in your hearts sing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs to God. You'll notice the metaphor. Putting on Christ is to put on love, to clothe ourselves with love. That's the sort of culminating cloak, if you will, that pulls together all of these other layers of kindness, compassion, humility, patience. All of those things that Paul is describing there are what we would call virtues. The virtues, good habits, second natures that we take on to ourselves and to which we are called to reflect the very character of Christ. And love is that virtue above all, which orders all of the other virtues. So it turns out that the virtues are something that you put on because they don't come naturally to us, brothers and sisters. We have to grow into the new person. And then, have you ever wondered what the link is? Because it's interesting that Paul talks about this metaphor of putting on Christ, putting on love. And then in verse 16, he starts moving to the verse that all of you love, singing hymns and songs and spiritual songs to God and admonishing one another, letting the word of Christ dwell in you richly. What might be the connection between those two things? Might it be that in fact, the connection is that's how you practice getting dressed. That's how you practice clothing yourself in Christ. Isn't it the case that we clothe ourselves in Christ's love by letting the word of Christ dwell in us richly, by teaching and admonishing one another, by singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs? And so the practices of Christian worship, because that sure sounds like church to me, that sure sounds like Christian worship to me, is exactly how Christ invites us to put on his love. Becoming like Christ takes practice. And I think that dynamic of recognizing that the virtues are something that we need to learn how to clothe ourselves in. We need to acquire things that don't come with our first nature, but require the acquisition of a second nature. Recognizing that the way that happens to us is in the particular lived, embodied practices of Christian worship, is at the core of the incarnational picture that is Christ, where God meets us where we are.